Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Lamb, sitting in for David Zhang. Here's a preview of some of today's top stories. California's governor faces a new recall effort. Find out why the group behind the petition believes they have a better chance this year. New York City's mayor says sanctuary city laws need revision to allow illegal immigrant criminals to be deported. More on what led to his comments. Kroger-Albertsons is being sued for a merger worth $24.6 billion. More on the legal battle and possible impacts. California's Governor Gavin Newsom is facing a second recall. This time, the group believes they have a better chance of winning as the state is facing a historic deficit and Newsom's ratings plummet to an all-time low.
After nearly 5 million Californians voted to recall Governor Gavin Newsom in 2021, organizers of the effort are seeking to remove him from office again. The governor was served recall documents on February 26. Ann Dunsmore, the campaign director for Rescue California, said over 450 signatures were collected from 5 counties to trigger the initial recall process.
It's just been this list of growing problems with him, all provocated by his desire to become president, which we've always known about him. But I think the timing's bad because the state's in a lot of trouble. I mean, he was boasting in the last recall of what we always knew was a fake surplus. And now we're coming around with a budget that's fairly impossible to turn back into a surplus again.
Dunsmore is referring to the state's $73 billion budget deficit. She criticized what she described as budget gimmicks and accused the governor of ignoring California's financial problems while campaigning out of state. In a post on social media X, Newsom wrote, "Trump Republicans are launching another wasteful recall campaign to distract us from the existential fight for democracy and reproductive freedom. We will defeat them." Newsom has denied that he could be the Democratic presidential candidate in 2024, though some fellow Democrats suggest he is aiming for the White House.
He certainly seems to be capable of fixing problems of a very large magnitude, like reopening the 10 freeway in 10 days or cleaning up San Francisco for 3 days, within 3 days. He had executive power for quite some time. I think he needs to focus on the problems he's created here. And he can blame, and already today he's blamed those problems on other people, that they weren't his responsibility. Well, he's the chief executive. 700,000 illegal immigrants getting health insurance is not something we can afford to do.
About 1.5 million signatures are needed to ensure that enough will qualify for the ballot, a sharp drop from the more than 2 million needed in 2021 to satisfy the threshold of 12% of the previous gubernatorial election. If successful in gathering the required number of signatures, the recall would give California voters the choice to remove Newsom from office before his term expires.
Now let's take a look at other top headlines. President Joe Biden met with the top 4 congressional leaders earlier today at the White House. The congressional leaders include House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. The White House said Biden invited the lawmakers because he wants them to put U.S. national security interests first and continue funding the government. A number of federal agencies will shut down as early as the end of Friday if Congress doesn't reach a deal. Funding for more agencies, including the Pentagon, expires on March 8th. Biden is also urging the House to pass the $95 billion package to aid Ukraine and Israel. The recent murder of 22-year-old nursing student Laken Hope Riley is prompting reactions from top leaders. Trump has promised to seal the border on day 1 if he's re-elected. And President Biden says anyone who's found guilty of a crime in the U.S. should face the full force of the law. An illegal immigrant from Venezuela, Jose Antonio Ibarra, was arrested in connection with the death of Riley on February 23rd. That's the day after her body was found on the University of Georgia campus. Trump wrote on Truth Social Monday that he'll begin the largest deportation operation of illegal criminals in American history when elected president. The White House issued a statement extending condolences to the family and loved ones of Riley. Following the Georgia murder case, New York City's mayor is now saying, hand them over to immigration and deport them. The accused murderer, Ibarra, was reportedly arrested in New York for allegedly endangering a 5-year-old child several months before Riley's murder. Ibarra was then released by the NYPD before a detainer was issued. Yesterday, Mayor Eric Adams said, quote, "We need to modify the sanctuary city law that if you commit a felony, a violent act, we should be able to turn you over to ICE and have you deported." Adams says the migrants committing crimes are a minority and that most want to work. The mayor called out the federal government for not allowing them to do so. The latest updates on the Israel-Hamas war. Israel, Hamas, and Qatari mediators all expressed caution today about progress toward a truce. That's after President Biden said he believed a hostage and ceasefire deal could be reached by next Monday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office provided an update on the latest progress. Under the draft proposal, Hamas would release up to 40 of the remaining hostages during a 6-week ceasefire. Israel would release at least 300 Palestinian prisoners. President Biden said yesterday a deal is close but not done yet. He also said Israel would be willing to halt the war during the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan if a deal is reached. But Qatar said a breakthrough had yet to be reached. It says both sides haven't reached a final agreement on any of the contentious issues. Negotiators from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar have been working to broker a deal before the start of Ramadan around March 10th. From the baseball field to a seat in Congress, Major League Baseball All-Star Steve Garvey is actively campaigning for California's U.S. Senate. NTD's Christina Corona has more from El Monte.
Former Los Angeles Dodgers first baseman and 10-time All-Star Steve Garvey, who's campaigning for California's U.S. Senate seat this year, shares his perspective on key issues affecting the state. Steve Garvey is campaigning in the city of El Monte, where he is endorsed, advocating for community engagement and progress.
This police station has gone through a very difficult period where they lost 2 of their officers. You know, this is a family, but also talk to them about needs. You know, the police here are down 25% over the last 12 years, starting in 2008. Haven't been able to get that back. So we're never stronger than when our stations.
Garvey, the primary contender from the Republican Party, aiming for the vacant seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. He lacks a background in elected positions, unlike the other prominent contenders in the race. But what inspired him to run for California Senate as a Republican?
I've played in front of hundreds of millions of people. I've always said to go to work with 30 or 40,000 people every night is daunting, but people get to know you. They think it's time for change. Career politicians need to go. We need a new, fresh face and with fresh ideas, and that somebody will spend the next 6 years dedicated to them.
And how he has tackled pressing issues in California.
People know that I care about them. That's why I've done tours of California, especially the homeless in inner cities of Los Angeles and San Diego, Sacramento. Talk to the homeless. My opponents haven't done that. Ask them what their needs are so that I understand, I can feel their needs, feel their hearts and souls, know that they just need somebody to care about them.
Garvey shares what policies he would prioritize if elected.
You can categorically go to all the policies that are so very important now. It's crime, it's the economy, it's homelessness.
Being a week away from the final day of voting, Garvey shares his thoughts on his Democratic competition.
I'm really not running against my opponents. I'm running for the people of California. What they do is their business. As my wife said, you know, when you used to take the field, you didn't take it for just Democrats or Republicans or independents. You took the field for all the fans.
Steve Garvey had a lot of wins on the baseball field, and now he hopes to become a winner in the race for the U.S. Senate. Christina Corona, NTD News, El Monte.
FTC and 8 states sued to block a $24.6 billion Kroger-Albertsons merger over fears of soaring grocery prices, igniting a legal battle amid the Biden administration's drive for consumer protection and economic fairness. NTD's Stephanie Sakal reports.
The U.S. Federal Trade Commission and 8 states, including Arizona and Nevada, are jointly suing to block the $24.6 billion merge between Kroger and Albertsons, citing concerns about higher grocery prices for Americans. The FTC argues that the deal would eliminate crucial competition, leading to increased prices for essential items. Kroger claims blocking the merge would empower retail giants like Walmart and Amazon. This legal clash aligns with the Biden administration's push against mergers that could rise prices. The impact on key 2024 election states, Nevada and Arizona, where residents already face high grocery bills, adds a political dimension. Democrats see blocking the merger as a win against rising prices, aligning with unions and addressing voter concerns. As food prices have risen, the White House emphasized the need for healthy competition to control costs. The legal battle unfolds amid broader economic concerns and the approaching 2024 election. Stephanie Sakal, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come right back. See why California might start testing sewage water for drugs. One lawmaker says it could help address the drug epidemic. Dozens arrested in Southern California in an international ATM skimming operation. But how do you spot a skimmer machine and protect your information? The 49ers are interviewing multiple coaches for their vacant defensive coordinator position. We'll take a look at the candidates. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Lamb. A sewage surveillance bill introduced in California would mandate testing wastewater for fentanyl and other drugs. The bill's author says it would help the state respond better to the drug epidemic. NTD's Jason Blair brings us more.
If passed, California Assembly Bill 3073 would require sewage testing for drugs, including but not limited to fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and morphine. It won't require all sewage plants in the state to comply, but at least 250 testing twice a week. The bill's author, Matt Haney, told the San Francisco Chronicle that, quote, "The drug epidemic is horrific and getting worse. Wastewater testing provides critical information that can be used to respond rapidly to spikes in the use of drugs. We can't wait on people to die to know what's happening and where it's happening." Overdose deaths have been a growing issue for California. For example, San Francisco recorded more than 800 overdose deaths in 2023. Addiction recovery advocate Tom Wolf said that number in 2017 was only 80.
But I'll tell you right now that fentanyl, the arrival of fentanyl, has changed the game. And you can see the disparity in how much it's changed in the amount of people that are dying from this drug.
The testing results would be sent to the California Department of Health and posted on their website. If passed, the bill is expected to cost each county $21,000 a year. More details are expected to be worked out within the coming weeks. The bill is scheduled to be heard by committee for the first time on March 18th. Jason Blair, NTD News.
FBI and Romanian authorities collaborated in a massive operation with 48 arrests made in Southern California as the international ATM skimming ring unraveled. NTD's Stephanie Sakal has that story.
Every ATM transaction requires trust in the bank and the machine, But card skimming poses a significant threat. Criminals install devices on ATMs to steal card information, costing over $1 billion annually, according to the FBI. In a recent case, 48 people were arrested in an ATM skimming operation in Southern California at the end of 2023. Skimming involves attaching devices to machines, often with concealed cameras, to capture pins. But these crimes seem to be worldwide, often sophisticated and evolving, making detection challenging.
So we went down to this cash machine, which looked like just like any other normal cash machine, nothing out of ordinary. So I put my card in, put my PIN in.
Muhammad Ali describes how he discovered an ATM skimmer.
So once I've put my PIN in, it said, please take your card out and the money will follow. So I just kept waiting and the card never came out. And within a few seconds, sometimes if you walk up to a machine which you haven't used before, sometimes it says temporarily unavailable. So that message came up and it's like the machine just all of a sudden broke down. After a few seconds, the machine just restarted itself and it came back to normal, like saying, oh, please insert your card to get some services. And I was like, hang on a second, where's my card and money gone? So I started to inspect the machine and I soon noticed that there was like a little thing just near the keypad where you enter your PIN. So I just touched it and it just fell off. And I saw that there was a tiny camera on it, a battery and a memory card in there. So I figured out that it was a recording device. Somebody's trying to record my PIN number. I started to inspect the remainder of the machine and I realized that where you enter your card, the slot where you enter the card, when I touched that part came off as well.
Consumers need to be aware of new techniques like skimming and shimming as criminals continually find innovative ways to steal personal data. Stephanie SoCal, NTD News.
We now turn our attention to the San Francisco 49ers and their quest for a new defensive coordinator. We speak with NTD's Carlos Reyes. Carlos, thank you for joining us. Let's start with the recent interviews. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley and current 49ers defensive passing game specialist Nick Sorensen are among those in the running. How do these candidates stack up, and what's the latest?
Absolutely, David. Staley's interview raised some eyebrows given his struggles as a head coach with the Chargers before. However, it's crucial to acknowledge his success as the Rams defensive coordinator under Sean McVay. Staley's defensive approach differs from what Coach Shanahan envisions, which could pose a risk moving forward. However, if Staley can demonstrate adaptability and a willingness to align with the existing defensive scheme, he might prove to be a valuable asset moving forward. The potential for a schematic overhaul is on the table if he takes the reins of the San Francisco 49ers defense. Sorensen, on the other hand, brings in an intriguing perspective. His coaching foundation under Pete Carroll aligns with the defensive scheme that Shanahan desires. Being an internal candidate, Sorensen possesses an in-depth understanding of the team's dynamics. The upcoming interview with safeties coach Daniel Bullock adds another layer of this process, with Coach Shanahan expecting to conclude interviews this upcoming week.
Carlos, now there's been some speculation about a high-profile candidate in the mix. What's the buzz about Bill Belichick possibly stepping in as the 49ers defensive coordinator?
Well, David, it's certainly an intriguing thought. With Belichick currently having a year off after parting ways with the Patriots, the 49ers could explore the possibility of bringing in one of the greatest defensive minds in NFL history. However, the question remains whether Belichick would be willing to take on a coordinator role. That's something that we haven't seen him step into for many years, even before taking the Patriots coaching job. His desire for control and his head coaching pedigree might be potential roadblocks. It's a matter of whether the 49ers are willing to meet his demands and if Belichick is open to such a role.
Now, shifting focus, there's been talk about Mike Vrabel potentially joining the 49ers. How likely is that, and what factors should be considered?
Well, David, Vrabel is surprisingly being overlooked in the recent head coaching cycle and could be a strong contender for the San Francisco 49ers. With a deep defense in place, the risk might not be too significant for him. However, it's essential to note that Vrabel's limited experience as a pure defensive coordinator with the Texans, where the defense regressed significantly, might pose some problems. Shanahan might prioritize someone with a keen focus on the finer details of the defensive side rather than solely relying on leadership qualities.
Fascinating insights into the 49ers search for a defensive coordinator. Carlos Reyes, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, David. It's always my pleasure.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up. And more from China. Numerous fires have been breaking out in apartments across the country recently. Horrifying scenes of the blaze are seen in Chinese social media posts, but are barely covered by state media. We interviewed a survivor who escaped one of the big fires. Tune in at 9:30 on NTD's China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Lamb, sitting in for David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.